listening to Her Profit Era, the podcast for founders who want a business that actually works, a business that's profitable, predictable, and pays them well. I am Cindy Kumar, a CPA, a fractional CFO from Abbotsford, BC, Canada. I'm the person founders call when they're tired of high revenue months with no money left over. I started this podcast because too many founders were chasing sales while their margins, cash flow, and bank accounts told a completely different story. I believe profit and money in the bank is the standard, not a bonus, and that every founder deserves clarity around their numbers. Each week, you'll get real financial strategy you can actually use and honest conversations with founders and industry experts about what it really takes to build a business that lasts. Today on Her Profit Era, I'm sitting down with someone who has made financial freedom feel achievable for everyone, not just the wealthy. Deacon Hayes is a personal finance expert, speaker, and the founder of Well Kept Wallet, a financial education company helping people transform how they manage money worldwide. His journey started back in 2010 when he and his wife paid off $52,000 of debt in just 18 months. And instead of keeping the blueprint to himself, he turned it into a mission. Since then, his advice has been featured in Yahoo Finance, US News and World Report, Investopedia, CNN Money, and he's even authored the best-selling book, You Can Retire Early, Everything You Need to Achieve Financial Independence When You Want It. Thousands of people have changed their financial future because Deacon showed them what's possible when you take control of your money with a clear plan. So today, we're diving into building wealth, designing a financial life by choice, not chance, and the exact steps he uses to help everyday people retire and build wealth on their own terms. Hi, Deacon. Thanks so much for joining me on Her Profit Era today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Could you share a little bit about yourself and how you got into personal finances?
Yeah, sure. So when I was first getting out of college, I got a job in sales and I was actually selling wood flooring.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and that was very different, right?
Yeah.
And it was 100% commission. So that was an interesting thing because I only made whatever I sold, right? So there was times where I have zero sales because it was, a long kind of sales record. So um, at that time, I also got married and realized, hey, my income is variable. We need to figure out how we can budget this money. So my wife and I got married. We realized we really need to figure out how to pay off our debt in a short period of time. We had $52,000 of debt. I had a variable income. And so we just said, okay, let's figure out who's been good with money and learn from them. So I started reading books from Ron, should I say, Ron Blue, Howard Dayton, Dave Ramsey, Jim Cramer, Warren Buffett, you name it. I just wanted to immerse myself in
Wow.
financial literacy. And then I just decided that the debt snowball that Dave Ramsey is famous for, promoting, that was the strategy we're going to use. So like, this is super simple. Just pay off the smallest debt and then keep moving down the list until it's all gone. So we did that and we were able to pay off $52,000 of debt in 18 months. And that was like a wake up call of how could I now shift from selling wood floors and doing this?
That's so cool. And then did you feel like you had to give up spending in different areas to be able to pay off your debt?
Yeah, so we decided that it was a priority to pay down debt and not do everything we want to do, right? So, for instance, I had a friend that was getting
Right.
married in Norway, and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. I probably would have been one of his groomsmen. But then you start figuring out airplane tickets, hotel costs, food, travel, all this stuff while you're over there. I'm like, there's just no way. I mean, it's going to cost us 5, 10 grand easy, right? So that was one thing we missed out
Right.
on. Eating out, we definitely decided, hey, we're going to eat out a lot less. Oh, Yeah, there's definitely that fear. But then they decided to have a reception when they came back, so we were still able to enjoy that.
Oh, that's perfect. What are your thoughts on like lifestyle kind of creep? Like as people start making more money, they end up spending more and they're not really tracking anything.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the biggest things, but the one that I find that's kind of the biggest budget killer is cars, right? It's when you're
Right,
making more money, you could easily say, "Oh man, I really want a nice new car that's reliable." But the reality is the average car payment is well, actually, it's around $745 per month. Obviously, it's going to depend on where you are. But that's a lot of
right,
money that you're throwing away to a depreciating asset, right? And so one of the
right.
things that I try to help people to understand is when you're starting out, you really want to focus on buying appreciating assets and make that a priority. And so then that way it's easier to say no when opportunities come your way. You're like, I can't do that because I'm saving for retirement or I'm saving for a down payment on a nice house, So really focusing on appreciating assets versus depreciating assets, I think helps with lifestyle creep.
That's such a great advice. What would you say to someone that wants to invest in like the stock market, but also has debt? I know a lot of people, instead of paying off that debt, they end up putting like $100 here and there into like well, simple or something like that rather than paying off the debt. What would you say is like the main priority?
Yeah, I think the challenge is when you have high interest debt, so credit card debt, let's say it's 20%, you're
Right,
typically not going to get that in the stock market, right?
right.
So what I say is, hey, make sure that you scale back your investing while you're paying down that high interest debt because getting 20% off of debt is just like almost getting 20% in the market. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I'd love to do both. The only exception I would say is if someone gets a company match and you're getting
Yeah,
100% free money, do up to the match, but then anything extra go to pay down debt.
that's such great advice. And then from like learning about personal finances, did you go into like coaching or like how did you start off your business?
Yeah, originally I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought I was going to do curriculum. I love the idea of teaching the younger generation about money. So,
Yeah.
high schools, colleges, things like that. And I did that for a little bit, but it was really a grind and hard to break into for me. So, I did pivot to coaching. But then I realized it's really more like marriage counseling is what I
Yeah.
found than actually like, hey, we're dealing with numbers here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's not the best way. So now I really love creating content. I think that if I can create content and put it out into the world that's very simple and helpful, and I make a living that way, and it's amazing, much more than I did when I was a financial planner, which I didn't talk about. I had a stint where I was a financial planner, but I realized that where my heart is helping the everyday person, and so creating content has really allowed me to do that.
Yeah, I feel like your content is so like easy and so digestible. I work in business finances and like I love how you just break it down. It's like $300 a month compounded over this many years will get you to that $1 million plus that you want for retirement.
And I wish someone did that for me, right? That's why I'm doing it.
Right.
'Cause I'm like, if I can do that for other people where they see it at 20 years old and they're like, that's it, $300 a month, I could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because I feel like finances is something where people just feel overwhelmed. They don't even know where to start, so they just do nothing.
Right. Yeah, and that's why if you can make it the simplest thing possible, right? What are some goals that you have? And it could be I want to make sure that I'm saving up for a house. I'm saving this much for retirement so that I have $1 million. Whatever those goals are helps drive kind of your decisions when it comes to your personal finances.
How do you help like people figure out like how much to put in like different directions? Like once you set your goals, what's kind of like the next step?
Yeah, so I use kind of a variation of the 50-30-20.
Okay.
Mine is kind of a little bit opposite. So it's 50% of your income goes towards necessities. Like this, you're gonna, I mean, you have to pay taxes, you got to pay for food, you got to pay for housing, that kind of stuff. 30% should be broken up into these three different buckets, and this is going to depend on your priorities, but investing, saving, and giving, and then 20% to your wants, right? I want a new
Right.
big screen TV. I want a newer car. I want a new iPhone, whatever it is. I think the challenge is people often kind of mix that up and they're like 30% goes to their needs, 50% goes to their wants. And maybe even less than 20% is going to that saving, investing, and giving. And so they end up short when it comes to retirement and their other goals.
And is this something you do like on a monthly basis, or do you look at it as like a whole year and then break it down?
Yeah, so I prefer people meet every 2 weeks with their spouse or significant other, to go over their finances at least once a month, and even just a simple check in of,
Mhm.
hey, we had a goal to put this much in savings. Are we hitting that goal? We wanted to put this much in investing or pay this much debt down. It just keeps the checks and balances because it's very easy to just overspend, buy more stuff, and then say, oh, I don't have enough money left over. So monthly would be ideal.
That's such great advice. Yeah, because I feel like you get paid every 2 weeks and then that money just disappears.
It does. Yeah. And that's why tracking it is so important.
Right. And what are your thoughts on like just spending things like on a credit card versus like planning it out and actually paying it off right away?
Yeah. I think there's certain things like buying a car, that I would rather people save up monthly to buy. So, for
Mhm.
instance, you say, okay, I want to buy a $15,000 car and I'm going to put $500 a month into an account. So you're saying, okay, so for, the next 10 months, I'll have 5 grand. So it's about 30 months. I'll have the cash to pay for that car.
Right.
The reason why that's helpful is because now you're really feeling the sacrifice. If you want that car bad enough, you're going to do it. If you don't, you might be like, well, I'll buy a $10,000 car instead, right?
Right.
Or, credit card purchases, I'm okay with as long as you pay it in full every month. If you have any challenge doing that, then I would just say don't. I would say, you're better off using a debit card that has, a Visa or MasterCard protection
Mhm.
on it and swiping it as a credit card. That way you're keeping yourself within, limits. Um, but I see no problem as long as people pay it off in full every month.
It's great tips. And do you like review your bank accounts like every single month too? Because there's a lot of avoidance around that too.
Yeah, I mean, I do it multiple times a month, but basically, and for a lot of people, right, your bills are
Yeah.
staggered, right? You'll have
Right.
your mortgage due on this date, and then you'll have your utilities due on this date, and all these different expenses that come in. So, um, really, I like to have like a $2,000 buffer in an account of there's this much money in there for bills to be coming through,
Yeah.
and so that way, you're not going to be paying overdraft fees or anything like that. And then making sure, yeah, on a biweekly basis, hey, are those bills getting paid on time? Is there enough money in the bank account? Do I need to make any adjustments to our budget? If you do that every 2 weeks, it makes it a lot easier so you don't run into those roadblocks like overdraft fees.
Yeah, totally. I feel like on the business finance side, people avoid it until it's like tax time and you have no choice but to look at the numbers.
That's why a bookkeeper is so important. I
Right.
have a bookkeeper, and it's like a huge weight off my shoulders because I know that every month it's reconciled. They send me the data,
Yeah.
and then I can review it and make sure we're on track.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And you have a book as well. So what led you to like writing your own book?
Yeah. So one of the things that I was interested, I'm still interested in, but I have a different take on it now is financial freedom, right? What does it mean
Right.
to have financial freedom? I'm not too concerned with the idea of retirement, because I think that I've seen a lot of people retire and be miserable. But what I
Yeah.
do like is the idea of having choices. And so when you have enough financial resources, you have the ability to make more choices, right? Whether you work or not, what kind of work you do, what time you work, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so that's what the book was about. It was about you can retire early, but everything you need to know about financial independence and how to achieve it. And so that was kind of the idea behind it.
Wow. And then how long did the whole like writing process take for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I want to say it was like 8 months to a year, and working with a publisher, which I never realized. I mean, you could self-publish a book in a month. When
Yeah.
you work with a publisher and have an editor, it's like there's a lot of back and forth. That oh, they don't like these numbers, or they don't believe them to be true, and you have to justify them and go back. And so yeah, it's about 8 months to a year.
Wow, that's amazing. A lot of patience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have other things going on. Like I have a
Right.
lot of respect for people that are just authors. Like that's their thing because there's a lot of downtime in that versus, I still had a business to run, content to create outside of just the book. So
Yeah. And I feel like there's so many different ways to like make money too, like real estate, stock market, running your own business. What do you find is like the most underrated or like misunderstood?
The stock market by far. Because I think that the reality is people think, oh man, I want to be a millionaire, so I got to like start a business. And you're,
Yeah.
do you know the grind that it takes to start a business from nothing? Like it's a lot of work, and often you're working 70, 80 hours instead of a 40-hour
Right.
work week, And then real estate, it's like, oh, that sounds great. Someone else pays your mortgage. You're like, yeah, but if the roof leaks, you got to fix it. If the hot water tank breaks, you got to replace it. Like there, if tenants put holes in the wall, it's not like this easy deal. Where the stock market is, wow, you have this long-term track record, like
Yeah.
100-year plus, and then you have even index funds that have like a 40 or 50-year track record that you can say, if I just invest this much money for this period of time, it's likely that I will have this big pile of money at the end. And I don't have to do a lot of work for it. I don't have to manage tenants. I don't have to start a
Hmm.
business from scratch. Not saying people shouldn't do that. I've done all three. But
Yeah.
having done all three, I realized, man, the stock market is the most underrated because if you do it and you're consistent, it literally is probably the only real passive income source out there.
Yeah. I feel like there's just a lack of education on like how to invest in the stock market, what kind of stocks, how, like what you need to look at.
There for sure is. And what I love now, though, is kind of, we hinted at it earlier, index funds, as a basket of stocks where, say in the 80s or 70s, that really wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
You were you had a broker and they're buying individual stocks and you're paying
Yeah.
every time it trades. And now you have an index fund where you can buy 500 companies in one investment and you have a long-term track record. And you can see, hey, is this something I want to do or not? And so really creating like a 3 fund portfolio with index funds is a super easy way to get started and diversify yourself.
That's such great advice. And would you recommend someone play like the long-term game of the stock market? Because I know a lot of times when the price decreases or something happens, people panic and then they start selling.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have a long term strategy. And what I like to do is what's called dollar cost averaging. So just say how much you're going to invest that year. I
Hmm.
like at least 10% of your income. So for numbers' sake, we say, okay, if we're going to make 120 grand, just for simple numbers, that means it's going to be $1,000 per month going into investments. When the stock market goes down, you actually buy more shares at a lower cost. So you're actually benefiting from the market going down. So I think that's what people need to do is say, hey, instead of trying to time the market or try to buy single stocks, you just invest consistently the same amount of money and you will benefit from those downturns as well.
That's such great advice because people always do the opposite.
They do. They're like, oh my gosh, I got to get out. I'm going to lose everything. You're like,
Yeah.
but now stocks are cheaper. And yes, I mean, it is one of those things where it can keep going down. But long term, we've seen everything rebound. The biggest or the longest time to rebound was the Greatest Depression, and that is kind of even a very different time frame, right? It was more of
Right.
an industrial time frame. We didn't have the technology we have today, the productivity we have today. So we're in a very different market today.
That's such great advice. And we talked about financial independence and how it's more about like freedom versus retirement. What does that freedom look like for you now versus like when you got into the personal finance space?
Yeah, I think originally I think I was like, oh, it'd be great to have financial independence so then I could go start a business. You're like,
Right.
well, that sounds backwards. You're like, I could start a business today. I don't have to be financially independent, right? I
Right.
want to be financially independent so I can invest in real estate. You're like, well, no, I could do that first and then, become financial. So it's more of, yeah, what do I want? Well, I want freedom of time. My kid plays baseball. I want to be able to go to his baseball games.
Mhm.
My daughter has, she's going to be speaking at Flag Day and I got to go out, at 9 o'clock in the morning. I have the ability to do that. I don't have a boss telling me where to be, when to be, that kind of thing. And so there is this flexibility of being able to do what you want, when you want, and hopefully do stuff that's meaningful, right? You're kind of replacing things that seem monotonous, maybe not purposeful, with stuff that's meaningful.
Yeah, I feel like that's so important. And a lot of times people struggle with like paying for things now, that dopamine hit, versus like thinking about the long term. You see people in retirement still working because they can't afford to retire.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle, right? People are like,
Yeah.
well, I want to be able to enjoy life now. I don't
Yeah.
want to put all this money away to enjoy later, right? And it's like, well, You can do both. You just have to have a plan, right? And the thing
Right.
that I talk about is having a strong why. Like, why do you want financial freedom? Why do you want to invest for the future? And for me, it's like, well, I don't want to be. I don't like stress. I don't like
Yeah.
having restrictions where it's like I was working a job one time and we wanted to go to Disneyland with my wife's family, and they're like, "Oh, you have to work that day," and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? Because I'm actually going to be in California. You're like, well, you're going to have to go back to your hotel room and log in from 8 to 12.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, I don't want that. Right. So
Yeah.
that strong why really gives you the discipline to say, okay, this is why I'm going to put together a plan and follow it.
Yeah. And what kind of like mindset shifts did you have to go through to get to like paying off like $50,000 in debt and then building like a financial structure, having the conversations with your spouse? Like there's so much discomfort in all of that.
Yeah, and I think that discomfort really drives the change, right? Sometimes when we're comfortable, you're not ready to change. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not feeling pressure, so why would I, not eat out? Why would I not do all these things? Um, so I think that that pressure is good, right? I think it helps people realize, oh, I need to change something, and but I think that awareness of, oh, do I do I want to have less stress? Do I want to have peace of mind? Do I want to live a different life than what I've experienced in the past? If the answer is yes to all of those,
Yeah.
well, this is the path, right? And so, um, one thing that I've learned is every yes to something is no to something else. So if you say yes to eating out
Right.
all the time, you're saying no to putting money in retirement. You say yes to, going on luxurious vacations. You're saying no to saving for your kids, education. Like there is a trade-off for every financial decision. And so it's important that people have that mindset shift of what is my why? What do I really want? And then make decisions based off that.
That's such great advice. But what if you don't even know your why? Like, say you're in your like 20s now, you're not married, no kids, no nothing. You're kind of just like going out, traveling, doing all of these things, but you're so short-term minded, you're not even thinking about like your 60s, 70s, 80s. What kind of advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, I think it is one of those things that's real, but I think you have to think about what not only what you're going to do over the next 5 years, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And I think it's important to say, well, maybe you're not married now, but do you want to get married? And if
Right.
you want to get married, do you want to keep renting or do you want to buy a house? And if you want to buy a house, do you want to live in the city or in a rural area? Like you really kind of have to plan these things out and have an idea. Not saying that you're going to have everything figured out at 20, but these are things where you're like, oh man, these are going to cost a lot of money. I want to buy a new car, not new car, but newer car every 5 years. Okay,
Yeah.
well you got to be able to have the money for that. So um, I think it's not one of the funnest conversations, but because you're like everybody wants to focus right now. Like I want to go out to the club, or I want to go on vacation, or I want to whatever it is. And it is one of those things where you just have to be. It's like a maturity thing. It's okay. I've had that fun. I've enjoyed life, but I do realize that there's a future ahead. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I got to make some plans for it.
Yeah, I feel like that's really missing in like the online social media kind of world. Everyone's like flashing that lifestyle, but behind the scenes, their bank account's empty and they're like living off of debt.
Oh yeah, I mean we have like record credit card debt, student loan debt,
Right.
unaffordable housing. There's all these things that are stacking up to just say, hey, newsflash, we got to make different choices when it comes to money.
Yeah, totally. And like, what if you don't have someone in your life that can educate you on finances or like there's so many resources online, but you can consume everything, but if you're not really taking action, then there's no point of even consuming.
Yeah, and I think I love the idea of focusing on one goal at a time, right? So let's just say, hey, if you're focused on paying off debt, there's literally two strategies for the most part: the debt avalanche, the debt snowball. And you're like, okay, well, let me figure out which one makes the most sense for me.
Yeah.
Well, I think the debt snowball because it worked for me, and I've seen so many people do it, and the motivation. There are people that have used the other one, right? So it's like you focus on what goal are you working on right now, and get rid of the rest of the noise, because otherwise you're going to get people talking about crypto and
Yeah.
NFTs and all this stuff. And you're like, now you're distracted from your real goal of paying off debt. Um, and so I think that's the best approach is say, hey, try to find the creators that have credibility and have the answers to the question that you're looking for, and focus on that until that goal is achieved, and then move on to the next.
That's so helpful. Just breaking it out into like bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm such a simple guy. Like I need it to be bite size, 1, 2, 3, and then I can do
Yeah.
it. If it's too complex, I just say, okay, not for me.
And then how do you use that kind of like template into like your content? Because it's like so digestible.
Yeah, I think I've been doing this now. I've had the site for 15 years. And
Wow.
I think that, personal finance, you literally could put on one sheet of paper, I think. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you spend less than you make. You
Yeah.
invest at least 10%, if not more, of your income. You save at least 10% of your income as well for a rainy day, for emergency fund, for future purchases. You have giving as some part of your plan and being generous, because we've been blessed by others. We should be blessed in others. And to be able to have the resources that you need to pay off the rest of your expenses on a monthly basis. And so I think that really just saying, hey, I've got this plan of I'm investing for the future. I've got money in savings for a rainy day,
Yeah.
and I'm being generous with my resources and spending wisely. Like it is one of those things where it is simple. Now it's not easy, meaning that like, okay, coming up with an extra $500 a month to invest could be hard right now, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the part that's a struggle. It's like, well, maybe I have to have a part-time side hustle to come up with that difference. Maybe I need to get rid of that student loan payment so that I have the money to invest. And so just making it simple is how people get progress.
That's so helpful. And do you recommend like just sitting down, creating like a spreadsheet of just like all your bank accounts, all your debt, the interest rates, just to get clarity on what's kind of going on and where you need to focus?
Yeah, so there's three. I use spreadsheets. I have a starter budget, which is super simple. That it's like, hey, this is just your basic, expenses and income, and here's your surplus or deficit. So you have
Yeah.
that starter budget. So do something where you're either doing it on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet. Um, if you have debt, having a debt organization, a debt reduction form. Mine's just called the deadline form. But where you're organizing your debt in whichever way you choose, and then a net worth statement where you say, okay, what are all my
Mhm.
assets? What are all my debts? And what is my net worth? Those three things right there will help you have kind of a foundation for, okay, what am I going to do to move forward to achieve my financial wise?
That's so helpful. And do you think like you could do something similar like on the business finances end as well?
Yeah, the only thing I add to the business finances is a pro forma. I think that for personal finances, I don't really, necessarily go out 10, 20 years or whatever. But
Yeah.
for businesses, I think it's super helpful because you're like, okay, well, I got to have some sort of inflation number in there. I have to know what my ad costs are, my marketing costs. I need to know what my employment costs or subcontractor costs are. And I need to have some sort of growth rate attached to that for an extended period of time so I know what does my business look like in 5 years? Where is it heading?
Right.
And then if I need to make adjustments, I can. So that's the only thing I would add to the business side of things.
That's so helpful. What are some like common themes or common problems you see like people have when they like consume your resources or like buy your book? Are there certain things you find that are like pretty common in all the people like consuming your content?
Yeah, I would say that inflation is probably the biggest roadblock for a lot of people. I see a
Right.
lot of people that are discouraged by it, that are maybe hopeless, right? Of like, oh, that's great. You say to invest that much money, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a reality, but I also think it's a mentality. I think that, we have access to making money like never before. You literally can log into a computer and do freelance work on Upwork. You could do, drive for Uber. Like there's so many things that you can do to make an extra $500 a month. It's, are
Right.
you willing to make that sacrifice? And that's a personal decision, right? I'm not going to force anybody to do it, but it is
Yeah.
possible. I mean, the amount of TV that we watch, is crazy. Scrolling on our phone, we definitely have an extra 5 to 10 hours a week to make extra money to make our financial dreams possible.
Yeah, it's so helpful. I feel like a lot of people are just focused on getting rich quick. And it's like we're saving all this stuff, like drop shipping, doing all of these things. But it's like just focus on the one thing that's going to make you the money, and then looking for other ways that you can use your skills in like education or resources, that like doing like contract work on Upwork or something like that, where it's like it's fully aligned with who you are and what you do, is just different streams.
For sure. And I think I encourage anybody to create a side hustle just for fun. Say, hey, you like to design graphics? Like, go to 99 Designs and set up a profile and bid on some jobs and just design some graphics and see how it goes. Like, you like to freelance write. It's a little bit harder now with AI, but
Yeah.
maybe you could be a freelance editor, right? Someone's got to edit the AI. So, and those skills can be very valuable, right? A graphic designer could be $75 an hour. An editor could be $50 an hour, whatever it is. And you're making, at 10 hours, that's $500, right? So
Right.
I think it is one of those things you just kind of have to pursue it and figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, that's so helpful. What would you say to someone that wants like to save or have like $100 million, but they don't have any debt? Do you have any like quick tips? I know you have like a lot of good ones on like your social media pages, like $300 a month. Do you have any quick ones you could just share with the listeners?
Yeah, I think the one thing is to really review your budget. I think that quick check-ins is one thing, but to go through at least once per year and say, okay, maybe I could call my cell phone provider and see if they have a better
Mhm.
deal. Maybe I could call my internet provider. Maybe I could shop around my car insurance, right? These are things
Right.
you can do without even changing your lifestyle. You could save $300 a month just by doing that and shopping around on existing stuff. It could be, oh, I'm spending way too much on groceries. If
Mhm.
I used coupons and did meal planning, I could save $200 to $500 a month, right? There are
Right.
things that you can do in your tool belt, but you have to be aware of it and you have to take action. So, really going through your budget line by line and saying, how can I make that smaller? I've seen people save 250 to $500 a month. And if you set over a year, that's up to $6,000 a year in savings that now you could invest for the future and have that example of investing $300 for 34 years at 10% gives you $1 million, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's so amazing and so helpful. I see like even subscriptions too, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO, all these things, but people aren't watching those every single day, but they're paying for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Going through your subscriptions is huge.
Right. Yeah, I feel like they add up. What's the best way for our audience to connect with you or like get access to like your resources?
Yeah, best place is wellkeptwallet.com or on Instagram at wellkeptwallet. Is probably where I'm most active.
Do you do like one-on-one coaching, or is it more of like your templates and like your content?
I don't do coaching, but I do
Okay.
respond to people. So if they email me and they have a question, I'm more than happy to answer. And I love Loom videos.
Do you have any like last minute advice for any of the listeners?
What I would say is that there's hope, right? I think
Right.
sometimes people can just be that worn out, burnout, and just know that there is hope. Like, we were drowning in debt. I didn't know anything about personal finance, at least not good. I didn't have solid information, right? And I
Right.
was able to overcome that in a short period of time. So just look for those examples, focus on the goals that you have at hand, and start crushing it.
Thanks so much, Deacon.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
If you're a founder who wants real strategy, not noise, and you want someone in your corner helping you build a business that feels aligned, is profitable, and actually supports your life, you can apply for CFO on Call. This is my one-on-one financial partnership for established founders, typically making between $500K to $2 million, who want clarity, who want structure and confidence with their numbers. The link is in the show notes so you can schedule a profit strategy call, or you can DM me CFO on Instagram at It's Cindy Kumar, and I'll send over all the details.